Good afternoon. So let me say my name is Wouter van Geluwe, but I won't blame you for my pronunciation. So it's good to be here back after 4 years to talk to you about all things audiences. So audiences are critical and central in everything that marketing and marketeers do. So we'll have a discussion on that topic today. I will also introduce a couple of new acronyms on top of the 4,000 acronyms that you already use on a daily basis. So the new acronym of the day will be AAAC, AAAS. And no, they are not new Adobe products. They are just something else that you will learn about in this session. So everything we do, everything you do is focused on customer experiences, one-to-one customer experiences. But to make those experiences possible, all of you have defaulted to using segments over the years. Segments of 1 million customers, segments of 100,000 customers, and so on. But I would hardly call that personalization. So personalization today, customers expect you to go all the way to the one-to-one level. But still, somehow, we have audiences fitting into that picture. Personalization at scale is what all of you should be doing and should be thinking about. But what does that mean? So personalization at scale is focused on these 4 simple words: real-time, omnichannel, consistent, and contextual. So that means that every contact, every touch point between you and your customer, whether it's on the website or on the mobile application, whether it's in a store, whether it's on a call center, wherever it happens, it has to be personalized in a consistent and contextual way, and it has to be real-time. And I know real-time means many things for many people, but real-time for Adobe means 250 milliseconds. That's the blink of an eye, this kind of a speed. By that speed, personalizations have to be optimized for your customer. So somewhere in there, fitting that into your ecosystem is a bit complicated. So you can see the whiteboard on the screen. So this is somehow your ecosystem, your environment, whereby you've got plenty of applications that have grown over the years. Website and mobile applications, marketing automation, data lakes, machine learning. All of these elements are part of your architecture. And you have done something like this with the blue lines, connecting them to each other. So some of you have been really good at connecting the dots between those solutions. Others have had challenges. Others didn't even bother. But this is preventing you from doing personalization at scale in a real-time, omnichannel, contextual, and consistent way. So there needs to be a better way to approaching that. And that's also where the concept of audiences, segments, comes to mind. I would say in the past, even Adobe, with our legacy solutions and the way our marketing cloud has grown over the years, we have connected segments between solutions and have sent a segment from solution A to solution B to solution C. Even though that was a fit-for-purpose kind of approach, it wasn't really fit for the future. There had to be a better way in approaching that. And today we are not really talking about segments anymore. Audiences are a bit different. I'll set the scene as to what the difference is between a segment and an audience. But from an architecture perspective, this is how we need to look differently at things. Now, an audience is a very simple thing. So in this case, I've taken the audience of Belgian Man City fans. There's a couple of members. And from an organizational perspective, this is more or less enough. This is an audience that is available and that is an object inside your environment. But it's not the only object. There are multiple things that come to mind again when talking about audiences, about segments, segment definitions. So an audience is the object that you can exchange between solutions. An audience has a segment definition, things like country equals Belgium and favorite club equals Man City. And then obviously those are linked to each other. From a conceptual architectural perspective, one of these 2 is easy to interchange internally. The other one is more difficult. But somehow most organizations have chosen to not exchange the audience objects, but have chosen to build those little blue dotted lines between solutions and exchange the data points like CRM data, web data, transactional data between solutions. That's how we have all grown up, how marketing has evolved over the last couple of years. But yeah, I would say that that's not the only approach that should be there. It's very complicated. It's very heavy in terms of resources to implement this and to make it work in an environment. So yeah, something needs to change. Also, a customer profile. This is my friend Kevin De Bruyne playing the Champions League final this weekend. This is a customer profile inside a platform. Now, most of you don't have one customer profile. Most of you have 10 or 15 or 20 customer profiles, depending on which solution you look at. And depending on which solution you use, some of these elements may or may not be available for that specific solution. That's also not how you build experiences. All of this needs to have a consolidated place in a single brain for communication and orchestration in your architecture, in your landscape. Now, the concept of audiences pops up in the bottom left corner, the audience membership box there. That's where the audiences become part of a customer profile. So obviously, there are multiple ways of looking at this audience, where it has been built, how it has grown, how it has evolved, what kind of source data is being used. But in the end, the concept of AAAC, the first acronym that you could see on the screen, audience as a currency, is the fact that you have a simple thing, an audience name and a membership, which is a customer name and a customer ID, or just even the customer ID is enough. Those two objects define what the audience is. And that's what inside a platform like Adobe can be used for personalization across all the channels connected to it. So looking at this concept, this object of an audience, there are, again, different ways of approaching this. I'll get back to that in a couple of minutes. But there are two ways. Either we go for the utopian dream world whereby everything happens in one solution and you delete all the legacy solutions of your architecture and replace them by Adobe. That would be ideal, and I'm happy to help you with that. But in reality, that probably will be difficult or even impossible to achieve. We're not going to replace your data lake. We won't be replacing a machine learning environment. And it's very difficult to anyway phase out legacy solutions as a whole. So looking at the whiteboard before, we talked about audiences, but you've got segments, and you've got profile, and you've got data sources. And all of these make your simple drawing a bit more complicated. So you'll see lots of Ds popping up, and somehow the way most companies that I work with have grown is by having these Ds represent the blue lines between solutions. Sometimes it's real time, sometimes it's batch, sometimes it takes a week, sometimes it takes a month, but data flows from one point to the other, and yeah, that may be a good solution, but also it may not. And in many cases, it's not. In many cases, this approach doesn't really work, and it needs to evolve to something else, whereby the Ds don't represent the lines anymore, but also where the A's starts becoming the central currency in your company, the central currency that's being exchanged and used to communicate between solutions. So, as part of today's presentation, audience as a currency, audience as a service, it's important to start to see the audience layer in a platform like Adobe Experience Platform as something that is used to streamline communication to a customer across any channel connected to that platform, but the audience itself doesn't need to be built anymore exclusively inside that Adobe platform. And that sounds like a simple thing, but it's actually a big thing, because it makes it so much more lightweight to connect the Adobe platform to your legacy data environments anyway. So the audience is a central point. However, whatever source may be used, that defines the audience. But nevertheless, you need a single place in your ecosystem from which that audience will be used to speak to the customer. Because remember, we are doing personalization at scale, which needs to be omnichannel, real-time, consistent, contextual. So the communication, the message being sent to the customer needs to be streamlined from the brain for communication and orchestration, which is Adobe Experience Platform. Now, I was referring to the two options. So there are two options to work with Adobe Experience Platform. It's probably not going to be a black and white kind of decision. It's always going to be gray. In some cases, it will be option A, whereby things are built and start to end with the base data, the segment definition, and the audience inside the Adobe platform. But in other cases where it makes more sense, we now have the flexibility to consume external audiences that have been created in a different solution and just take them into the platform of Adobe for communication to the customer. And I think we need to look at this from a layered approach. So these are the three layers inside a platform like ours. You've got the activation and personalization at scale layer, which speaks to the customer. you've got the audience creation, and you've got the foundational audience support layers, and they may be in Adobe platform, and they may be in a different platform. So all of this is quite I think, interesting as an evolution from a marketing platform perspective, from a customer communication platform. But what does it mean for you? So I've seen many active Adobe Experience Platform customers in the room already. Whether you're a partner or a customer, there are things that will change in the platform to make this change from segments to audiences a reality. And it starts by giving you a renewed, a updated audience portal. So what you'll see next is a live demo of the Adobe Experience Platform user interface, in which the first thing you'll notice is that the left side menu has changed, and now you can see a folder-based structure there. So if you operate with multiple audiences in an organization, then it's important to be able to create folders to hold those audiences properly and make them available to users in a more structured way than before. So creating those folders is linked to access control, so not everybody will be able to do this obviously, but once you do it, you have the ability to take any segment and basically store it inside that specific folder. That greatly impacts the usability of the platform, and also the fact that users will have a more focused attention span to what is relevant for them, and they won't see anything else that's not relevant to them. The second thing I want to focus on is the fact that in this platform, you build not 5, not 10 segments, but we've got customers who have hundreds of segments, even more than 1,000. So how do you manage access controls to that? That's also an important question. So not everybody should be able to access every segment. And with this audience portal release, you'll see that we now have the ability to apply access controls at the segment level, not just segment level, but many objects in the platform now have the ability to be linked to a specific access level. And when you do, then obviously only the people who have that access right will be able to access that specific data object. And anybody who doesn't have the access won't actually be seeing it in the UI of the platform at all. So that's the audience portal gives you a more streamlined way to interact with the segments, with the audience environment of the platform. You can build segments anywhere and consolidate them in one place. And if you looked in the previous video, you've got that origin column up there, so whereby you'll be able to see where the audience actually came from as well. So that's useful as a business person as well. Secondly, standardized labeling and governance controls. So those access controls give you increased control over who gets to see what. And then, well, it's a consistent life cycle for activation workflows. I'll get into that in a couple of minutes, whereby I'll show you how those audiences can be used from an activation perspective as well. Now, I've been creating segments myself for the better part of the last 15 years. And in most of the solutions, that was like gender equals male, page view equals homepage, and then combining that with an and/or relationship, and that's it. And even though that has been quite sufficient for many use cases, in others it wasn't, especially the marketing automation use cases. It's not enough to have simplistic and/or controls and/or not controls to make that possible. So with audience composition, which is the next capability I wanted to highlight here, you'll have the ability to basically work and think as a marketer. Now, most marketers I know, they tend to change quickly their opinion. What is active today or what is validated today may change tomorrow. And as you build a segment, you need to have that flexibility as well in applying those changed rules, that changed logic as well. So with audience composition, you will now have an additional way of creating segments. So when I click Create Audience, I'm getting into a different UI. This is a waterfall kind of audience creation UI, whereby you start with a base audience or a combination of multiple audiences. In this case, I'm picking a couple out of the available segments. And then, well, I want to exclude people from audiences. So people who have recently purchased something have no place in my segment because I don't want to bother them with additional communication. And then the people who are left in that segment, I want to do something specific for them. In my example, I want to send them an email and push them to my local stores as well. So I need to enrich my information in the email and make that personal. So if a customer lives I live in Belgium in a city called Waregem. My postal code is 8790. So if you send me an email that sends me to a store, it needs to be attached to that local store close to me. So with this enrichment capability, that's what I'm doing. I'm basically bringing in external data on the fly. This needs to be part of a data set in the platform, and then you can attach it to the email, to the personalization payload in the audience composition. And from there, if somebody qualifies for that segment and is sent to an email marketing automation solution, then this payload will be sent along to that solution. And also, what you'll see next is this. Sorry, let me just jump back a couple of seconds. And the last thing you've seen in here is a ranking. So sometimes marketing automation, we don't want to send an email to everybody, but to the top 1,000 customers, the top 10,000 customers. And with this ranking capability, you have the ability to listen, to look into the data of everybody who sits in this audience. And then in this case, based on the lifetime value, we have picked the top 1,000 customers with the highest lifetime value. So this ranking capability is also quite new and makes it possible to bring more details, more context, more personalization into your communications. Something I didn't show you here is the split functionality, so the ability to split up an audience. That's really interesting for testing. So if you have this full audience of 1,000 people, you could send 250 to Facebook, 250 to Google, 250 an email, and 250 nothing, and then basically compare the outcome of those different marketing activities in customer journey analytics as well, getting more insights into what is more effective for the specific group of people. Audience Portal and Audience Composition are releasing later this year and potentially even this month, but we'll see what happens in the next couple of weeks with that. Now, once this is the outcome of that personalization payload, when sent to Adobe Journey Optimizer, so using this segment along with the personalization payload in a campaign in Journey Optimizer, this is the email that we would get. So this last box on the bottom, head over to your local store. That's the personalization payload that we enriched in the audience composition just before. Now, we've built segments. We have built segments in a new way. We have classified them in a better way and provided more access controls. Now, let's think about other sources for segments. In this case, I already mentioned customer journey analytics. So many of you have been using Adobe Analytics for years. Those who have know that you could create a segment out of an analysis in Adobe Analytics and then send it back to Adobe Target or Adobe Audience Manager for activation and personalization. That same capability exists in customer journey analytics. So you can basically, in your analysis, in this case, a call feeling of positive, click the Create Audience from Selection button. And as that happens, the audience that you create will be sent from Customer Journey Analytics to Real-Time CDP, so to the audience library. And from there, again, you'll have the ability to activate on that audience towards multiple destinations downstream. So that's an example of one more source for creating segments. However, it's not only Customer Journey Analytics. So this is going to finish in a second. But after this, I'm presenting together with customer Prisa, who's the leading publisher in the Spanish market and Latin America. They are using this functionality, and they are using Google Cloud Platform to use machine learning scores that qualify audiences. And they are already using this capability so that they can ingest an audience from GCP into Adobe Experience Platform for activation downstream. So it's really opening up the engine of platform to be more accessible from other solutions as well. So we've created audiences, but let's have a look at how to use those audiences afterwards. And one of the most common use cases that we saw in the past was focused on lookalike modeling. So if you've been using Audience Manager as a data management platform that had the capability of lookalike modeling already, but it was mainly limited to anonymized data because a DMP didn't have that much personalized data. Now, with an upcoming release, you'll see lookalike modeling, lookalike audiences pop up as well inside Adobe Experience Platform, whereby every segment that has a population that's high enough will automatically have a lookalike model that's created by Adobe Experience Platform. So there's no manual thing to do. It will automatically create a reach versus quality kind of visual which will look like this. So the lookalike insights tab at the segment level, you'll see the similarity and reach graph. And then as a marketer, you have the ability to select a specific point in that graph for activation. You also see things like influential factors. So what were the most influential factors for the people who qualified in the base audience? What can we learn out of that? And how can we use that as insight, as intelligence for downstream personalization? And then finally, the last step is to build an audience which is similar. In this case, 87% similar, because that seems to be the drop-off line whereby it goes steeply downwards. So 87%, of course, this is a test and try and test kind of approach, whereby you select multiple percentages and then activate on those audiences to see how they perform, and then you take the insights back to optimize. But with this approach, well, lookalike modeling becomes available to you as an organization as part of real-time CDP using audiences inside Adobe Experience Platform. Voila, so that's lookalike audiences. Then building a lookalike audience is one thing, but many organizations have historically used first-party data, of course, but also second and third-party data. Now, second-party data means that you and the company that you work with have an agreement and you exchange data with each other. That was typically focused on data management platforms, so the DMPs of the world, the Googles and the Facebooks, and all of those environments. You have the ability to use second and even third-party data. But, well, there are challenges around that topic, especially in Europe with GDPR, increased privacy controls, and so on. So we need to have a way to securely exchange data, which is consent-driven. So the customer needs to consent for this to happen. But we need to provide organizations the ability to exchange that data to each other. So the way to do that is called segment match. It was released last year in Adobe Experience Platform. In a couple of minutes in the next presentation, you'll hear me speak to Prisa. They have a partnership with Real Madrid's football club, whereby they are exchanging segments in a secure way with each other and basically enriching what they know about a specific customer so that they can be more personal in the communication to that customer. The setup here is quite simple. You select your segments, you add it to a feed. This feed is subject to a mutual agreement between you and the partner. And then basically, well, you give the feed a name. You have to select the marketing actions, and that's where you keep control. You decide what your partner can or cannot do with the data that you provide to them. And with data, I mean a segment qualification and not the raw data. The profile attributes, the events, all of these granular attributes are stored in your own platform instance and are never shared to the partner. The only thing we share is the audience ID, the audience name, and the qualification for that customer, along with the identity that you could see me select. So you had the ability to select IDFAs, GA IDs, EC IDs, and any other identity to basically calculate the overlap between the two audiences. And then you have enriched information about the customers that you both know. So it's a bit different from the typical DMP days, whereby you had second-party data and third-party data for reach extension use cases. In this case, it's not about reach extension. It's about making sure that you have more data points available about the customers that you already know. It's a change, but that's linked to the whole cookie-less, third-party cookies going away, etc. And we need to link this data exchange to a person-based identity, which means that you have to know this customer before being able to use a segment match capability. And then lastly, once you have audiences available, once they have been shared and are ready for activation, then you need to be able to take action on those audiences. So we need to send them to destinations. As you know, Adobe's real-time CDP has had multiple destinations all along. We've been growing the catalog over the years. And today, I think we have about 70, 80 destinations out of the box available. So in this case, I'm taking my audience built in CJA, Customer Journey Analytics, sending it to Facebook through the destination connectors that have been set up in my instance. Obviously, there's a mapping there because, again, we are exchanging data based on a personal identity, in this case, a hashed email. And then eventually that leads to a segment, to an audience from Adobe Experience Platform to becoming available in Facebook for activation. You'll see me pop up the Facebook UI in a second. So that exchange happens in real time. So you select a segment, you add it to Facebook, and then the next step is that on the Facebook Ad Manager UI, you will see this segment in your list of available segments for campaigns. Now, it's not just Facebook, it's much more than that. From a destinations perspective, we have, as I was saying, 60 to 70 destinations in advertising, marketing automation, and more. I would say in the end, looking at Adobe Experience Platform as your central brain for communication and orchestration, that's what you should be doing. That's the positioning in a platform, in your ecosystem. It's not just a tool to do one thing. It's an omni-channel solution that sends communication to customers across paid media, advertising, email marketing automation, but also to call centers, also to point of sales environments, also to offline environments, and so on. And the audience capability, all things audiences, is what you see behind me. This is in a nutshell what we have today available. Most of this has been shown in this presentation. What you didn't see is the custom audience upload. Even though many of you are very advanced and mature in the way you build audiences in your organization, others have slightly older tactics, which is a CSV file or an Excel sheet that contains a couple of customer IDs and that needs to be used for marketing automation. Yes, we see that quite often. So with the custom audience upload capability, you now have the ability to, on the fly, take a CSV file or an Excel file and just throw it in the Adobe Experience Platform UI. It will create a custom audience, which you can then use for journeys, email campaigns, and much more as well. The last thing I want to mention, obviously, the new buzzword of the day is ChatGPT and Gen AI and so on. Adobe is not blind to that. Building a segment with the key value pair combination of gender equals male or the composition UI, well, it's already a step forward with the composition UI, but ideally, a business person should be able to say to the platform, hey, I want to target 1,000 customers with a top lifetime value. I want to enrich that data using this data in that data sets, and they need to qualify for segments A, B, and C, and then have the platform build that segment for you. And that's exactly what we are building and what you'll see released in the next 6 months. Adobe Sensei Copilot will make its way to the Adobe Experience Platform user interface, and from there you'll be able to use natural language to basically give instructions to the platform to build your segments. That's one use case, but not the only one. The same thing goes for customer journey analytics. As an analyst today, I need to understand my data really well. I need to know where the attribute sits in my data model, and I need to take the dimension and the metric and build a table and so on. But for business people, that might be a bridge too far. So similarly, with Sensei Copilot in customer journey analytics, you'll be able to use natural language once again to build out your complicated analysis without having to build it out manually yourself. So that's it in a nutshell for this presentation. I saw many of you take pictures and shoot videos, and I know the videos went quickly because I only have 25 minutes. However, we have a very active community channel on YouTube, which you can find here. So my presentation is recorded and will be posted on that YouTube channel probably somewhere early next week. There's also much more content there about the platform, about the architecture, about use cases, and so on. So if you want to follow up on this, just have a look. And yes, I've made a QR code as well to make it even easier for you to click the subscribe button. So with that, let's open it for questions.
Walter, that was so inspiring. I've never seen this many questions in a session before. Sadly, we won't have time to answer all of them, but Walter will be around, so please, if your question isn't answered, I'm just going to pick the 2 most popular ones, but do speak to him. So, question number 1. Will the split component also be able to facilitate control groups?
I didn't get you.
Will the split component also be able to facilitate control groups?
So that's the intention. The intention is to create, to split up your audience so that you can have a 90% activation rate and a 10% control group. It will make that possible. And yeah, those audiences will pop up in the overview in the audience portal, and you'll see which one is which, so that you can activate them properly downstream.
And how do you avoid oversaturation of comms if so many audiences can overlap with lookalike features being used?
Yeah, saturation is always a challenge whenever you do marketing. We don't want to speak too much, and I actually have an opinion that's very outspoken. We should all speak way less to customers, to be very honest. Most of the communication they see is quite, dull or rubbish, to use those words. The controls there are to be set at the channel delivery in the end. So Journey Optimizer has a way to control that the frequency by which we speak to the customer across various channels and so on. But I think that the bottom line message here is that if you personalize your communications all the way to the one-to-one level, it would also be less annoying for customers to have to look at them. So the more you personalize, the more you will listen to the behavior of your customers, the more you will stop sending marketer-initiated campaigns in favor of event-based journeys, whereby you listen to customer behavior and only respond when the customer actually does something that needs to be responded to. So that's a mindset change. No solution can help you there. It's a cultural change that you need to embed in your organization. And yes, marketers, you need to stop sending weekly newsletters because nobody reads them. And you should start listening to their behavior and respond to the behavior in real time. That's going to be more impactful.
Walter, absolutely inspiring. And before we give him a big round of applause, please do, here's the code for the survey, so please do complete that survey. And amazing. Thank you, Walter.
Thank you very much. Have a nice day.